Imagine driving at night along a remote road, when suddenly a massive unlit object appears in the sky, casting a curtain of white light over you. Torn from the car by unknown creatures, they find themselves inside a craft, subjected to terrifying examinations, glass containers holding captive people, bizarre-looking creatures, and a single word echoing in their minds: sanctuary. What happened during those 2 lost hours? Why were they chosen? This is the account of the A70 incident, one of Scotland's most disturbing abduction cases. But before we begin, it's important. If you've ever seen something frightening or experienced an abduction, be sure to share it in the comments, because I believe in your account. Your story might be the next to inspire others. We'll be happy to hear from you. The A70 incident is one of the most mysterious and debated cases of alien abduction in Scotland. It all began on the night of August 17, 1992, on a road connecting Edinburgh to a small town called Tarbrax. 2 friends, Gary Roods, a 35-year-old ambulance technician, and Carling Wright, 25, were on what seemed like an ordinary trip. They were transporting a satellite television system for a friend who lived in the area. However, that night would become unforgettable and brimming with mysteries. Around 11 p.m., as they were traveling on the A70 road near Harper Rig Reservoir, a spot known for strange tales and supernatural reports, something extraordinary happened. In the dark sky, both caught sight of an object that immediately caught their attention. It was a dark structure with no lights, apparently made of a smooth metal and without windows. It had a rounded shape, and its size was striking, almost intimidating. The object seemed to be hovering over the car. Despite feeling uneasy and sensing that something was off, Gary and Carling decided to continue driving, trying to remain calm. Only seconds later, the object cast an intense white curtain of light over the road and the car, illuminating everything around them. Gary chose to speed up and get through the light as quickly as possible. However, the moment they entered that beam of light, everything changed. Both of them instantly lost consciousness. Gary awoke in a dark, unfamiliar place. He couldn't see anything around him, not even his friend or the car. For a moment, he even thought he might be dead. This terrifying thought was cut short by another blackout. When Gary came to again, he was back in the car, which was now careening down the road out of control. Carling was seated beside him, but both were in a state of shock. Gary managed to regain control of the vehicle, and they continued on, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The object that had been hovering over them had disappeared without a trace, but their discomfort persisted. Upon arriving at their friend's house in Tarbrax, they realized something even stranger had occurred. About 2 hours of time were missing. Although they remembered fastening their seatbelts at the start of the trip, now they weren't wearing them, something that seemed inexplicable. Their friend, who had been waiting for them since just before midnight, was worried because he had expected them around that time, but they only arrived at about 1:30 a.m. Both recounted to him what they had seen on the road. After a brief rest, they decided to return to Edinburgh, but chose an alternate route, avoiding the A70. In the days that followed, Gary began to suffer recurring nightmares and strange sensations. He reported feeling constantly exhausted, experiencing headaches, and having trouble sleeping. His nightmares contained disjointed and terrifying images, though he couldn't recall all the details. Carling also seemed shaken, but both initially chose to keep what had happened a secret, fearing they would be ridiculed or labeled as crazy. After some time, however, they decided to seek answers and got in touch with Bufora, the British UFO Research Association. Through Bufora, they met the renowned researcher Malcolm Robson, who suggested both undergo regressive hypnosis to recover memories of the 2 missing hours. Under hypnosis, surprising revelations surfaced. Gary and Carling remembered that as soon as the car entered the light, the vehicle stopped working and they were surrounded by strange creatures that pulled them out of the car. Carling recalled seeing Gary placed on a floating stretcher while he himself was guided up a ramp into a craft. Inside, both described a highly illuminated room. Carling's memories were fragmented, but he remembered being taken along a circular corridor by one of those creatures, then to a room where he was placed in a chair, completely naked. He described undergoing a strange examination. The room was translucent and full of bright lights, intensifying his sense of vulnerability. Carling also saw glass or acrylic containers holding other people, who were also naked. He further recounted seeing larger humanoid creatures than the first ones and feeling intense pain in his eye, as if something had been inserted or examined there. Gary, on the other hand, recalled being in a similarly translucent circular room, lying on a stretcher. Above him was a device that resembled a rotating lens, emitting a buzzing sound. He mentioned that one of the creatures had a long, translucent arm that touched his shoulder, causing severe pain. Another striking memory was a hole in the floor, filled with a gel-like substance. He saw a column emerging from that hole, making an electrical noise, and from that column came a tall, thin creature with grey skin and a frail appearance. Nearby was a smaller creature with a heart-shaped face, adorned with enigmatic symbols. During this moment, Gary asked why they were doing that. The answer was cryptic: sanctuary. We are already here, and we are arriving here. He was also told that humans had advanced qualities, but were nonetheless limited. He apparently also saw a human man wearing a black suit in what he called the backstage of the craft. His last memory before waking up in the car was of a terrified, naked woman sitting against a wall. These revelations shocked the investigators. The hypnotherapist who conducted the sessions concluded that the accounts were consistent and genuine, but the events described remained shrouded in controversy. Over time, Carling chose to distance himself completely from the incident. He avoided interviews and eventually denied everything, rejecting the experience. Gary, however, delved into ufology studies, seeking to understand what had occurred that night. The A70 incident remains one of Scotland's most intriguing reports of alien abduction. It has drawn the interest not only of independent researchers, but also of the Scottish Ministry of Defence, although no official details have ever been released to the public. To this day, the case divides opinions, with some viewing it as compelling evidence of extraterrestrial contact, and others considering it an example of confusion or collective hysteria. Stories like this reinforce the fascination with unexplained phenomena and fuel curiosity about what really happens in the depths of the universe and right here on Earth. If you enjoy UFO accounts, keep following this space for more mysteries and impactful stories.